Hello there everyone, it's me Harry, and today is day 9 of the Mediavent Calendar. So what does this mean? Yep, you guessed it, more video games. And this time around we're going to take a look at games published and or developed by Sega, one of my favourite game companies, behind the Mega Drive, the Saturn, the Dreamcast, and then they went third party. Yep, they've had a lot of history, and now let's take a look at my Sega games that I own. But before we go over to consoles, let's take a look briefly at 2 PC games I have that you may have just noticed. Sonic 3D Flicky's Island. This is a port of the Saturn version, but with different special stages. And this is a re-release from Empire Interactive's Explosive brand. The interesting note about this release is most Explosive re-releases of PC games do not have the original soundtrack on the disc. So in that case, for Sonic 3D, I actually had to make my own file, and then I just moved over the soundtrack from the Sega Saturn version that I already have downloaded onto my computer, and then just renamed the files and then called it a day. So, yeah, that's that. And then the other title I have is the PC port of Sega Rally 2 for the Dreamcast. Windows 98 and Windows 95. Published by Empire Interactive. Whilst in the US it was published by Mattel Interactive, which is very strange if you'd ask me. And because of that, it's a 2-disc set. You would still both discs separately. Now let me just grab and put them back where they belong. There we are. Ooh, speaking of something like that, here's something I forgot to mention in my Taito video, the Rainbow Islands Bubble Bubble Double Pack. It was released sometime in 2002. And there's some ads for other titles in there as well. So there's Sonic 3D, there's Crazy Taxi's PC port, Virtua Tennis's PC port, and a bunch of other games. Yeah, Empire Interactive did re-release quite a lot of PC games, and those were just some of them. Now, let's get on with consoles, and we're going to start off with the Sega Saturn, because why else? And we're starting off with Virtua Fighter 2. I've had this game for a while, but the disc doesn't actually work in my Sega Saturn. It freezes the system, so I think the disc might be broken or something, and I've not been able to find a replacement. But this is a port of the classic arcade game of the same name, and a very fun one indeed. If I can get the thing to open, there we are. And since it's Sega Saturn packaging, it's just 2 pieces of plastic connected together with cardboard. Very cheap indeed. And the discs easily come out of the holders, which makes it worse. But yeah, I still don't even know why I still have this one in my possession. I just do, so yeah, there we are. Next up is one that I've had since 2017, Sonic 3D Flicky's Island. And until I started collecting video games again, this was the most expensive title I'd gotten. It was £24 back in 2017, so it was still expensive even back for then. Because video games used to be a lot cheaper. And then all of a sudden, the COVID-19 pandemic rolled by, and then all of a sudden it just made people buy everything in sight, and video games have gotten a lot more expensive since then in the retro gaming scene. But yep, 3D Flicky's Island is a port of the Mega Drive game of the same name, but with a different soundtrack and slightly different levels and a brand new 3D special stage that was done by Sonic Team. The game was still developed by Traveller's Tales though. And then we come over to Sonic Jam, which is a compilation of the first 4 Sonic games on the Mega Drive: Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and Sonic and Knuckles, as well as playing Knuckles in Sonic 2 and Knuckles in Sonic 3, like how the game should have been. This came out in 1997, like with Sonic 3D. And it's got the classic designs of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles on the front. And then on the back, you got all of this. I'll try and make sure not to detail the Sonic ones as much, because I already did a video about the Sonic games I own. So if you want to watch that, then watch that video. But aside from that, this was essentially an early prototype of Sonic Adventure with the Sonic World segment. So, yeah. For the Dreamcast, I only have one sort of published Sega game on here. I only have third-party games these days, and that's F355 Challenge Passionate Rosa, which is a game that it was developed by Sega, but Acclaim published it for overseas releases because the Sega didn't have the Formula 1 license at the time. I think they only had it for arcades, and so here's the disc. And then here is the manual. Yeah, the hinges on the back of this broke, so I had to put the case on the front. Because Dreamcast packaging is a lot more fragile than PlayStation 1 packaging, and that's a fact. And now, since we're done with that, let's go over games that were released after Sega went third party. So for the PlayStation 2, I only have 2 titles. No coincidence there. And we're starting off with Virtua Cop Elite Edition. Yeah, Virtua Cop Elite Edition. So this was some of the Sega games that were localized and published by Acclaim Entertainment. There are a few others that were also around as well, and you'll get to see those later on in this video. But this was essentially a enhanced version of Virtua Cop 1 and 2. And I don't think it ever made it to North America. Here's the disc and the manual. The back has an advert for the PlayStation 2 port of Virtua Tennis 2, which Acclaim published as well. And then for an actual Sega published game, we have Sega Classics Collection. So this is a compilation of different titles that have been remastered by a joint venture Sega held with D3 Publisher in Japan. Called, I think it was something like 3D Ages. And then eventually that was dissolved. So some of them never left Japan, but quite a lot of them did make it to Europe and North America. I think North America as well. And they were bundled together in a single package rather than all of them being released separately, because they were all budget titles in Japan. Because it wasn't, part of D3 Publisher after all. One of the biggest names in budget titles. Now, we've taken care of the PlayStation 2. Now let's look at the GameCube, of course. We're starting off with Super Monkey Ball from Amusement Vision and Sega, released in 2002. This was a launch title for the system in all 3 territories, North America, Japan, and Europe. And the gameplay obviously is simple. You roll around in a ball and complete the maze. It's an enhanced port of an arcade game called Monkey Ball. So here we are. And distributed by Infogrames, because this was right when Sega entered into a deal with the company to distribute their games after they went third party. Although with the PlayStation 2, most of them went through Sony. And then the back has this. So while, yeah, it does have, their logo on the packaging, it doesn't appear in game, only Sega's logo does, and Amusement Vision. So, yeah, it's just a distribution deal. And also released on the same day was, on May the 3rd, 2002 in Europe, was Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, an enhanced port of the Dreamcast game Sonic Adventure 2. And this was Sonic's debut on a Nintendo platform, followed up shortly with Sonic Advance on the Game Boy Advance. Here we are. And then if you have a look here, they misspelled Dr. Eggman's name with 2 N's instead of 1. And Hedgehog isn't even capitalized, so this is a little bit ingrammatical. So, since it's an enhanced port, it's got improved graphics and some extra content in it. Once again, distributed by Infogrames. I do like the artwork, though. It is quite nice. You know, Sonic and Shadow, you have Omo Chow, a Hero Chow, and a Evil Chow. Eggman and Tails, and Rouge and Knuckles. Each representing the hero story and the villain story. And with that, it was the first time you could ever play as Dr. Eggman in a mainstream Sonic game, which was a very fascinating touch. He has been playable in racing games and spin-offs before, but as I said, this was the first time he was playable in a mainstream game. Next up is Crazy Taxi. So this is a port of the PlayStation 2 version that was originally done by Acclaim Studios Cheltenham. And obviously Acclaim published this version as well. Released on the launch window as well for the GameCube in both North America and Europe. I think it came out in Japan a little later. So yeah. It's just as fun as the Dreamcast version, even though I originated with the PlayStation 2 version of the game because that's what my sister had. But aside from that, it's okay. So here's the manual, and then the ad has an ad for 18 Wheeler, another Sega arcade game that was ported over to the Dreamcast and then the PlayStation 2 and GameCube. And speaking of that game, here it is. Once again, developed by Acclaim Studios Cheltenham, published by Acclaim Entertainment, and yeah. This was released in June of 2002. So, converted, published, distributed by Acclaim, created by and produced by Sega. So, and then here is the disc. I've never really understood the rules on how 18 Wheeler works. And then here we are. And then on the ad, on the back, it's an ad for Criterion Games' Burnout, which was another GameCube launch title. And the Xbox version came out on the same day as well, funnily enough, in Europe. Beach Bikers Virtua Beach Volleyball. Yep, a beach volleyball game from Sega. And it's got a 3+ rating, despite the fact that it's got girls in it. It's hot, it's intense, it's beach volleyball. Yeah, I think it was rated T for teen in the US, so that was a much more suitable rating instead of a 3+. But I actually think they didn't even bother looking over this game's content. It's nothing like Dead or Alive beach volleyball on the Xbox, but still, it's got college girls in it. So, yeah, distributed by Infogrames once again. And this was released in September of 2002. So, yeah. I don't have much else to say about that game. There are plenty of beach volleyball games around. Here is Sonic Mega Collection. The way that allowed Nintendo players to experience Sonic's early Mega Drive history for the first time ever. And this game, of course, obviously brought that to life. And this came out in March of 2003 in Europe and 2002 in Japan and North America, containing 7 games alongside some unlockable stuff as well. Obviously, Mega Collection Plus has more content than this, but still, it's nice to have this anyway. There we are, manual, and then the back, there's nothing on there. And then shortly afterwards, Sega started publishing games on their own, so they didn't need Atari's help anymore. So one of the first games they released on their own in Europe was Worms 3D, developed by Team 17. So, obviously, this was just a publishing deal. Sega doesn't own the Worms franchise. And this was published by Acclaim Entertainment in North America, aside from the Xbox version, which Sega also published. And it's basically the first 3D installment in the Worms franchise. So, yeah. So there's the disc, and there's the manual. The back of the manual has an ad for Sonic Heroes, which came out a few months later. And speaking of Sonic Heroes, here it is. This was one of the first GameCube games I'd gotten. And obviously it's the best version of Sonic Heroes. Like, the Xbox and PC versions are okay, and definitely not the PlayStation 2 version, but still. Wouldn't want Dr. Eggman to conquer the world again, wouldn't you? So this came out in January of 2004. And it says all new Sonic on the top rather than Sonic's platform debut, like on the other versions, because obviously Sonic had been on the GameCube before, so there wasn't any point in them needing to do that. The back has an ad for Worms 3D. And aside from that, there's nothing else I can really say. It's just a game, that's all. Samurai Jack: The Shadow of Aku. So, yep, Sega published a Samurai Jack licensed title. And you'd think it would be good, right? It's mostly just a simple action-adventure hack and slash. It's not really that spectacular. But it's fine enough if you like the show, I guess. But you'd be expecting a lot more than what the game has to offer. It was developed by our Adrenaline Entertainment or Amaze Entertainment. And then lastly for the GameCube selection is Sonic Gems Collection, another compilation of Sonic games, and this came out in November of 2005. So this one has some of the remainder of the of the Game Gear games, even though all of them had already been released on Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut. So yeah, they released 6 of them twice. But the main features were Sonic the Fighters making its console debut for the first time, Sonic CD, which hadn't been re-released since 1996 when its PC port came out, and Sonic R, which made its debut on other systems aside from the Saturn and PC as well, but based on the PC version of the game. And there's also a few other unlockable games as well. So the GameCube version came out in all territories, but the PlayStation 2 version, which I did used to have, but I've since sold it, only came out in Japan and Europe for some reason. I don't even know why. I'm guessing Sega must have supplied some sort of like console exclusivity deal with Nintendo or something. But I don't know. Now we're on to the Xbox, where I have 4 games. Crazy Taxi 3. So this is basically like the best of both worlds between Crazy Taxi 1 and 2. So it includes 1 level each from both of those games, as well as an all-new 3rd level. Developed by Hitmaker, published by Sega, distributed by Infogrames, because this was another early 2002 release. But yeah, it's still a fun game regardless, if you like Crazy Taxi. Although I would say that the first level, the first game is still the best, though. I've never played the second game, funnily enough. The House of the Dead 3, the 3rd game in the House of the Dead franchise. And it supports light guns and whatnot. Once again, another Infogrames distributed release. And then it was later ported as The House of the Dead 2 and 3 Return on the Wii, and I think it had a few other re-releases as well. I think Forever Entertainment is making a remaster of this game at the moment, because they've already done so for the first 2 House of the Dead titles, alongside some of the Panzer Dragoon games. And there we are. Next up is one of my favourite arcade games of all time, Outrun 2. Yep, there was an Xbox port of this great arcade game, and it plays just like the arcade version did. Except, there's only one little issue. Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast triumphs everything over this game, and the Xbox version of that is one of the rarest games for the system. I don't think I've been able to find it for a good price, unfortunately. So it was developed by Sega AM2, ported by Zumo Digital, formed up by former Infogrames employees, and published, obviously, by Sega, released in 2004. The last Xbox title I have is Sonic Mega Collection Plus, an enhanced port of the original Sonic Mega Collection with with some Game Gear games added in and some other Mega Drive titles. Normally, you would have to do these by playing certain games a certain amount of times. Or if you had additional Sega game data, then you would unlock them straight away. Which I kind of like that kind of thing. So, yeah. And now we're on to the Xbox 360 with the best of both worlds, with Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, with Banjo-Kazooie. So, yep, Rare's Bird and Bear duo made an appearance on the Xbox 360 version as playable characters, and they were unlocked by default, which is interesting. But I would say the Xbox 360 version of the game is the best version. And I would say this is actually one of the best kart races I've played. It's a very polished game developed by Sumo Digital. And alongside that, there is also Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, the sequel of the game, featuring even more Sega characters and whatnot. And also including Wreck-It Ralph as a bonus playable character. Obviously, that was done to promote Wreck-It Ralph, because this game came out in 2012, shortly before the film did. But it was also because Sonic appeared in Wreck-It Ralph in a small cameo. So there's an ad for the Sonic the Hedgehog store, which I think doesn't exist anymore. And there's also a little leaflet that was for the downloadable content that was included in the game. I don't have any of that. I think the code was used up ages ago by the previous owner of the game. So, yeah. But that's day 9, all sorted and done. Hope you enjoyed this part, and I'll see you next time for day 10. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.